The Alistair limousine was a gilded cage, silent and sterile. Inside, Julian Alistair, the impeccable heir in his tailored suit, felt the suffocating weight of his inheritance and the impending strategic engagement to Harrison Shaw. His life was a spreadsheet of duty, dictated by his mother, Eleanora Alistair, the formidable matriarch. Julian was profoundly lonely, aching for something undefined, freedom, perhaps, or a moment of true self. A routine late-night detour forced the limo through the city's derelict industrial sector. Julian's gaze, usually blank, was snagged by a colossal, crumbling brick wall bathed in the harsh glare of a single work light. There, under the light, was the artist. Rhys Kestrel, paint sprattered and coiled with fierce, defiant energy, was wielding aerosol cans like a dancer. She was painting a massive mural, a heart-stopping burst of color and raw emotion that seemed to scream against the sterile corporate skyline Julian inhabited. He glimpsed a huge, sorrowful eye, weeping intricate patterns, a stark, powerful critique of his world. Julian was instantly, violently captivated. The audacity, the freedom, the sheer untamed passion emanating from her was a physical jolt. In the fleeting seconds the car passed, the image of Rhys, her face streaked with color and concentration, burned itself into his mind. She was the polar opposite of his controlled existence, the very embodiment of the spontaneous, authentic life he yearned for. Back in the cold luxury of the Alistair mansion, Julian couldn't sleep. The memory of the mural and the magnetic artist wouldn't fade. His obligatory life felt suddenly unbearable. He knew approaching her as the Alistair heir was impossible. She would despise him. But the craving to return, to witness that fire again, was an urgent, dangerous obsession. He resolved to create a mask. The gilded cage had cracked, and Julian, the captive, was already plotting his escape into the shadows. The detours became Julian's lifeline. For 2 weeks, he watched Rhys Kestrel work on the enormous wall of the abandoned Rourke foundry. He memorized the arc of her arm, the way she paused to commune with her chaotic, soulful work. He realized his interest wasn't academic. It was an urgent, desperate pull toward authenticity. He knew he couldn't approach her as Julian Alistair, the polished heir of the Alistair Corporation, the very machine she painted against. He needed a shield. He traded his limousine for a borrowed, unremarkable car and his tailored suit for dark, simple clothes. He created the persona of Alexander Bruce, an independent art consultant working for an anonymous patron interested in unfiltered urban works. He found her late one night, the air thick with aerosol. Rhys, small but radiating immense intensity, turned instantly defensive. "Consultant," she scoffed, holding a spray can ready. "Here to consult about graffiti removal?" Julian maintained a respectful distance, injecting a warmth he rarely used. He presented the offer, a private commission for a collector who desired absolute, uncensored creative freedom. He used her professional name, Rhys Kestrel, a subtle nod to the fact he'd done his homework. No corporate affiliation, he lied smoothly. My client appreciates unbound expression. No budget constraints. The subject matter must be authentic to you. This was the hook. Julian knew the promise of artistic freedom was the only currency she would accept. Rhys's suspicion warred with her evident fascination. She challenged him, searching his calm, open demeanor for the lie. Julian met her gaze, feeling a reckless thrill in the audacity of his deception. He left her with his new discreet burner phone number and walked away, trusting the lure of the canvas to bring her back. 3 days later, she called. Their initial professional meetings quickly dissolved into intense, shared discussions at the foundry. The commission was to be titled Imprisoned Light. Julian, as Alexander, proved to be the perfect sounding board, asking not about logistics, but about the feeling behind her work, the why of her defiance. The chemistry was instantaneous and volatile. Rhys found Julian's insight into her pain startlingly profound. "You talk like you understand being trapped," she challenged one night, their proximity heightened by the low light and industrial setting. "But you don't look like a man who has ever been trapped by anything real." "Some constraints are made of steel, some of silk," Julian countered, the lie heavy on his tongue. Their eyes locked, and the charged silence between them felt infinitely more truthful than any word they spoke. Julian was falling, swiftly and completely, for the woman who saw the prison in his soul. But the real world was closing in. Eleanor Alistair, his mother, was accelerating the Alistair-Sterling merger and his public engagement duties. "You are becoming erratic, Julian," Eleanor stated during a cold breakfast, her voice a precise weapon. "Your unstructured time is a liability. The engagement announcement is imminent. There is no room for deviation." The pressure intensified Julian's addiction to Rhys. He needed those late-night hours where he wasn't the heir. One evening, Rhys shared a deeply personal memory related to her father's passing, a moment of profound vulnerability. Julian reached out, his hand brushing her paint-stained wrist. The contact was electric, shattering his composure. "Rhys," he whispered, the truth bubbling up, "there is something you must know about." But Rhys, sensing the imminent revelation, recoiled, shaking her head. "Don't, Alexander. Patron and artist. No history, no strings. Just the light." Julian swallowed the confession. He had built this sanctuary on a lie, and now the lie was the only thing protecting it. He had fallen for the street artist, and the higher the emotional stakes climbed, the more catastrophic the crash would be when Julian Alistair was finally unmasked. The massive mural, Imprisoned Light, was nearing completion. The emotional tension between Rhys and Julian, still operating under the mask of Alexander Bruce, was at its breaking point. Julian was terrified of revealing the truth, and Rhys was desperately trying to ignore the intimacy that contradicted her fierce independence. The deception shattered earlier that afternoon. Rhys had been on a supply run in the polished city center. Near a massive financial tower, a new advertisement blazed. "The future is united." It was the announcement of the Alistair-Sterling merger. Beneath the slogan, in a high-resolution photo, stood Julian Alistair, the composed, dark-eyed heir, flanked by Eleanora and Harrison Shaw. The world tilted. The man who had listened to her soul, who promised artistic freedom, was the very architect of the sterile corporate world she despised, and he was engaged. Rhys felt a searing nausea, the raw shock of total betrayal. Alexander Bruce was merely Julian Alistair slumming in the shadows. Her rage wasn't loud. It was cold, precise, and absolute. That night, Julian arrived at the foundry. The work light was off. The imprisoned light was finished, a staggering indictment of captivity, waiting in the gloom. Rhys sat silently at the workbench. "Rhys, it's magnificent," his voice reverent. She didn't look at him. She reached across the bench, picking up the matte black Alexander Bruce card. Next to it, she placed the newspaper clipping featuring Julian's corporate portrait. "The consultant," Rhys stated, her voice dangerously quiet. "The consultant, Mr. Alexander Bruce, and the heir, Julian Alistair, fiancé to the Sterling fortune. Which persona bought my trust, the silk or the steel?" Julian froze, the blood draining from his face. Exposed, he could only offer a clumsy, desperate plea. "Rhys, please, let me explain. It started as curiosity, yes, but it changed. I didn't lie about how I feel about you or your work. I came here as the part of me that your art awakened." Rhys stood, her anger a visible, radiating force. "Everything you told me was a lie. You came here as the ultimate hypocrite. You wanted to taste danger without sacrificing your crown. You are Alistair, Julian. You are the architect of the gilded cage, not its prisoner." "I love you," he whispered, the truth erupting, raw and uncontrolled. Rhys scoffed, a single, bitter sound. "Love? Love is honesty, Julian. Your life is duty, and your honesty is reserved for your bank accounts. Get out, take your guilt, and leave me alone." Her rejection was final, an impenetrable wall of righteous fury. Shattered, Julian slowly retreated, losing his sanctuary to his own deception. The blow landed hours later. Eleonora, having monitored Julian's odd behavior, tracked the unidentified female subject. A sleek, black Alistair limousine pulled up to the foundry. Eleonora emerged, radiating glacial authority. "Miss Kestrel," she stated, ignoring the art, "I am here to clean up Julian's liability." She produced a slim white envelope. "Inside is $100,000. It is severance. You take this, you sign a non-disclosure, and you disappear from the city. You don't contact him, and you certainly don't appear anywhere near the engagement party." Rhys faced the matriarch, her heart pounding but her chin defiant. "I don't take bribes, Lady Alistair." "It's not a bribe," Eleanora corrected, her tone dangerously low. "It's insurance. Refuse, and I will have you arrested for aggravated vandalism and ensure every gallery knows the headline, 'Vandal Artist Blackmails Alistair Heir.' You will be erased. I am far better at destruction than you are at creation." The brutal pragmatism of the threat landed like a physical blow. Eleonora had bought the power to destroy Rhys's entire future. "Julian is weak," Eleonora concluded, her voice laced with cold contempt. "He chose his duty the moment he put on the Alistair name. Don't humiliate him by making him choose again." Eleonora left. Rhys stood alone, staring at the poisonous white envelope. She had lost the man she thought was Alexander, and she had gained a powerful enemy in the woman who defined Julian Alistair. The gilded cage had extended its shadow, demanding her exile. Julian was defeated. Rhys's rejection and his mother's swift, silent cruelty forced him back into the gilded cage. He tried the burner phone repeatedly, leaving desperate, self-loathing messages, but received only silence. He knew Eleonora had succeeded in silencing Rhys, and he was too much of a coward to fight her. In the subsequent weeks, Julian retreated fully into the identity of the heir. He focused on his duty with a cold, frantic intensity, extinguishing the lingering memory of Rhys. He stood beside Harrison Shaw at every function, their union celebrated as the epitome of corporate power. The facade of the grand illusion was his only refuge now. The pinnacle of the submission was the engagement gala at the Vance estate. The ballroom was a fortress of opulent control. Crystalline chandeliers, Baroque music, and the cream of society celebrating his sacrifice. Julian, immaculate in his tuxedo, felt like an empty shell. Every smile, every toast was a performance designed to reassure Eleonora that he was back in line. Eleonora, moving with predatory grace, paused beside him. "You are the future, Julian," she murmured, her eyes radiating proprietary triumph. "This is what lineage demands." He could only nod, the gilded cage sealing shut. While Julian was performing his sacrifice, Rhys was preparing her departure. She had burned Eleonora's bribe, refusing to be bought, but she accepted the necessity of leaving. She would not, however, leave silently. For 3 intense nights, in a hidden underpass beneath the city's major highway, Rhys created her final masterpiece, a silent, furious testament to their doomed affair. She poured her grief, not rage, into the canvas. The mural, titled The Price of Lineage, was devastatingly simple. Two hands reaching across a void, one hand painted with the texture of spray paint and grit pulled away. The other, refined and smooth, was caught fast in a tangle of shimmering gold and emerald chains that grew directly out of its own immaculate skin. In the distance, the Alistair Towers mocked the scene. A single tear-like drop of vibrant red paint fell from the imprisoned hand, symbolizing the soul shed for the sake of the legacy. When it was finished, Rhys felt emptied, cleansed. She had spoken her truth. She packed her backpack, ready to disappear from the city and the man who chose chains. Hours later, Julian escaped the suffocating gala. He drove back to the abandoned foundry, finding it sealed behind a towering hoarding, future home of the Alistair Sterling Innovation Hub. She was gone. The cold reality of his loss pressed down on him. He drove aimlessly, his dark tuxedo a uniform of shame, until he reached the underpass. He saw it immediately. Illuminated by the stark street lamps, the price of lineage blazed across the concrete. Julian stopped dead. He saw his own failure etched onto the wall, the refined hand imprisoned by the chains he himself forged, weeping the loss of his soul. He reached out, his immaculate cuff against the raw paint, the chasm between them tangible. He understood now he hadn't just lost Rhys, he had willingly discarded the chance to be truly alive. As dawn broke, Julian stood facing his indictment. The engagement press conference, the final sealing of his fate, was hours away. He knew with a terrible, desperate certainty that he must choose again. He had to destroy the gilded cage regardless of the cost to earn the right to search for the street artist who held the only truth he desired. The sacrifice of lineage was about to begin. Julian shed his tuxedo like a discarded identity. He left the Alistair estate before dawn, walking away from the towering granite facade and his entire inheritance. He carried nothing but the clothes on his back and the fierce resolution in his heart. He drove to the Grand Financial Hall, where the Alistair Sterling merger press conference was minutes from beginning. At 9:58 a.m., just as Eleonora Alistair and Harrison Shaw took their places beneath the harsh lights and flashing cameras, Julian walked into the atrium. His simple clothes were a stark contrast to the opulence, making him instantly recognizable as a disruption. Eleanor's composed smile evaporated into a look of cold terror. She tried to pull him back, hissing warnings about his reputation. Julian ignored her, moving directly to the podium. He anchored himself, looking out at the stunned faces of the world. "This morning," Julian announced, his voice steadying, "I was scheduled to announce the finalization of the Alistair Sterling merger and my engagement." He paused, letting the silence magnify the audacity of his defiance. "I am here to announce that I refuse that future." The room erupted into chaos. Flashes exploded. "Effective immediately," Julian declared, addressing his decision to the world and specifically to the mother who had controlled his life, "I resign from all positions within Alistair Corporation. I forfeit my shares, my inheritance, and the position of the heir." He met Eleanor's enraged, desperate gaze. "You will be nothing," Eleanor shrieked, losing her regal composure. "Then I will build a life from nothing," Julian countered, stepping away from the podium and the life he was born to. He walked out of the hall and into the light, feeling the exhilarating, terrifying lightness of a man who had sacrificed everything for truth. His only compass was Rhys's final, heartbreaking mural. He drove back to the underpass, finding the massive wall where the price of lineage still blazed. As he searched, he found a tiny, almost invisible Kestrel symbol etched into the concrete, and beside it a faint, chalked address, The Beacon. He recognized it, an old, defunct lighthouse on the city's remote industrial coast, a place symbolic of guiding light and solitude. He raced toward the sea. He found Rhys in the shadow of the tall, circular structure, her backpack packed, her gaze fixed on the turbulent horizon, ready to vanish. "Julian," she whispered, stunned by his sudden appearance and his humble attire. "I saw your last canvas, and I paid the price." He told her of his choice, his voice raw but resolute. "I left the Alistair Corporation this morning. I broke the chains, Rhys. I chose. I don't have a title, I don't have a plan, but my canvas is empty. Will you help me paint it?" Rhys's amber eyes searched his face, seeing the stark reality of his sacrifice. The fall from grace was total. He hadn't just given up money, he had given up his very identity. She saw the genuine vulnerability and the profound love in his gaze. "They will ruin you," she whispered, heartbroken and awed. "They can't touch this," Julian affirmed, tapping his chest. "You taught me that the only thing worth fighting for is the light inside." Shedding her anger, Rhys stood up. She reached out and touched his face, her paint-stained fingers brushing the side of his jaw. "Then your hands are dirty now, Julian Alistair," she murmured, a profound tenderness replacing her scorn. "Good," he breathed. He leaned in, and the kiss was not desperate, but a profound connection, the meeting of two souls finally aligned. They left the lighthouse for a derelict boathouse further down the coast, a forgotten space bathed in brilliant natural light. Julian helped Rhys stretch a new, enormous canvas. He didn't know how to paint, but he knew how to prepare the surface. Rhys began sketching the sweeping lines of her new vision, a vast, open horizon. She handed him a brush. "You start. It needs a foundation. Something steady." Julian dipped his brush into a warm, neutral gray and drew the first hesitant stroke across the canvas. It was the first act of his new life. Rhys smiled, dipping her own brush into a defiant gold. She placed her hand over his, guiding the stroke. Their hands, one refined and one stained, moved together. The final cinematic shot of a true partnership. The heir had chosen the street artist, and together they began to paint their masterpiece of freedom.